Let me say something that might feel uncomfortable at first, but stay with me. Most people don't fail at change because they lack discipline. They fail because they're trying to change from the wrong version of themselves. You don't rise to your goals. You fall back to your identity. And if you've ever wondered why you keep circling the same habits, those same reactions, those same emotional patterns, even when you know better, my friends, this episode is going to give you clarity. Because change doesn't start with what you do. It starts with who your system believes you are. Here's something almost nobody explains. There are usually two versions of you operating at the same time. There's a version of you that listens to podcasts, that read books, set goals, wants more. And then there's a version of you that shows up when you're tired, stressed, overwhelmed, or even emotionally activated. And under pressure, that second version wins every single time. Now, it's not because you're weak. It's not because you don't care. It's because the version of you is familiar to your nervous system. Most people think, I just need to try harder. But your system doesn't respond to effort. It responds to your identity. And at some point, usually quietly, your identity shifts. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just slow enough that you didn't notice. Identity, it isn't your goals. It isn't your intentions. It isn't even what you believe consciously. Identity is what your nervous system expects to happen next. So if your system expects inconsistency, self-doubt, emotional shutdown, pulling back when you're under pressure, then it will guide your behavior there automatically. Not to sabotage you, but to keep things predictable. Your system values familiarity more than success. That's why willpower fails. That's why motivation fades. That's why habits collapse when there's stress. My friends, you're not fighting laziness. You're fighting a self-image your system is protecting. Now, the identity shift has already happened. You just didn't name it. Now, this is so important because most identity shifts, they don't happen during these big moments. They happen in repetition. That time you said you'll start again tomorrow. The time you broke a promise to yourself. The time you numbed instead of felt. The time you said, this is just how I am. Each moment wrote a small line of code in your mind. And then over time, your system learned, don't trust this voice. Pull back when things get hard. Stay small. It's safe here. Now that's the moment your identity shifted. And it's not because you chose it, but because it was reinforced. And here's the key, my friends. Identity is trained. It's not chosen. But the good news is that means it can be retrained. And change fails when the nervous system feels threatened. This is where most personal development gets it wrong. People try to install new habits on an unsafe system. Your nervous system interprets big change as danger. That's why, my friends, you self-sabotage right after progress. That's why anxiety spikes when things start going well. That's why you pull back just as momentum builds. It's not fear of failure. It's fear of unfamiliar success. Your system says, this isn't who we are. Abort. So if you want to stick to this change, your identity must shift slowly enough to feel safe. Stability first, intensity later. So I want to give you a quick exercise this week. I want to give you something that's practical, it's simple, but it's powerful. So I want you to write in your journal, like you did last week, once per day. Pause and ask yourself these 3 questions. Who is my system expecting me to be right now? Who is my system expecting me to be right now? What emotion is driving these expectations? What emotion is driving these expectations? And what would a regulated version of me do for the next 5 minutes? What would a regulated version of me do for the next 5 minutes? That's it. You're not fixing anything. You're not forcing change. You're interrupting unconscious identity. Awareness, my friends, is the wedge that creates choice. So this week, I want to go deeper with you. I want to go deeper with you in a couple places because identity and regulation work together. So this week on Tuesday, not Wednesday, I'm going to go live on the Facebook page with a session that I called The Moment Your Identity Shifted and You Didn't Notice. We're going to slow this down. We're going to map out where your system learned to default and how to gently reprogram it without forcing discipline. And on YouTube this week, I'm going to release a video called Nervous System Reset, How to Calm Anxiety, Overthinking, and Inner Chaos. Because identity work fails if the system stays deregulated. Calm is not a luxury. It's infrastructure. So let me leave you with this. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're not failing to change. You're just becoming aware of a system that's been running the show. And awareness is where identity shifts begin. Quietly, safely, and on purpose.